A quick little news video today. It was intended to have a few more articles to talk about, but a lot of them are kind of ongoing, so we'll see about that. But let's talk about some reveals, some interesting kind of tidbits, and some cancellations, which really do hurt. But first, we have to talk about Outcat Games revealing new CRPG, Warhammer 40k Dark Heresy, which is interesting. Outcat Games, if you don't know, is actually a really good developer that has done a lot of these like really insane. I don't want to say insanely quality, but like really well done, put together. Other like CRPGs, for example, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader literally just came out a couple years ago, and it while I haven't fully invested into it, it does seem incredibly well done. But there has been a trailer for Dark Heresy, and it looks pretty good. It's really interesting that we're also getting a second season pass for Rogue Trader, meaning that Outcast is going the full. Did I say cast? Outcat is going the full distance with both games, and yeah, when it comes down to it, it it looks really well done. But that's Outcat in general, and I just love bringing out Outcat in the forefront. NetherRealm is now now confirming that support for Mortal Kombat 1 is over, which is no surprise. Usually, these fighting games from NetherRealm have followed the same cycle. It's usually a certain amount of DLC characters that were planned, usually licensing agreements, uh, and so much so much other stuff that like is like the same thing every single time. And even if it's an unfinished game, which a lot of people are decreeing this as such, it doesn't really matter to them. They'll move on to the next stuff. Um, a a big a big like problem is someone pointing out is it's disappointing because there's no thorough quality of life, no online lobbies, and locked away skins. You truly gave us an unfinished $140 game, an extreme low from WB. What changed over there? It hasn't really changed. It's just Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers, and yeah. But when it comes down to Mortal Kombat 1, it kind of follows into the same pattern of other Mortal Kombats. We haven't really had a very fair entry since Mortal Kombat 9 back in the day. It seems very DLC oriented. Once we finish our DLC cycle, move on to the next one. Um, yeah, when it comes down to it, I just it's disappointing to see that NetherRealms is at this point, but that's kind of the way it be. Star Wars Battlefront 2, which happens to be one of the more controversial Star Wars games to have come out in the past decade, uh, is is interesting because the support for the game ended in 2020, but it kind of came back, and it's a lot of the developers still feel like they didn't get a chance to finish the game. Um, and this has been marketed several not marketed but this has been marked several times from past developers that felt like they really could have done more into the game and made it a fully realized concept, because if you don't know, Battlefront 2 in either iteration is some of the most addicting gameplay. From the old Battlefront 2 to the new one, it does have this type of gameplay loop that I do think is very high quality and very well put together. While the microtransactions kind of doomed this newer Battlefront 2 into being like a controversial mess, it still was a good game under the hood. It just needed to get rid of all the backlash and microtransactions that weighed it down. Um, but I still think it is there's obviously passion in this game. Even after everything was said and done, once you get to about 2019, I do think this game is at its best. And of course, 2020, and even during the kind of less support years, I still found myself going back and playing it in random years. In 2022, I played it for a solid like 50 hours, which is not as much as some, but is a fun experience to go back and play multiplayer. I do think this is a worthy investment to still go back and play. I understand the resurgence is going to fade out eventually, but I recommend checking it out. It's cool. But hopefully, Battlefront 3 does get eventually made, because they are talking about how they want to get the band back together, for lack of a better term, to make Battlefront 3. So we'll see. Death Stranding is getting an anime adaptation, which is interesting. I thought it would. I understand why live action is probably not going to be a thing for it, because it is like photorealistic as a art style. Uh, but at the same time, it seems to be extending the universe, um, which is really really cool. I do love when it comes to like when it comes to the video game adaptations being extensions, not copies. Uh, for example, like Prince of Persia, I feel like is very similar to some of the game. Yeah, it has its own little storytelling, but it's mostly the same idea. And like Assassin's Creed is also very similar. I like the idea of extension versus just copying. I know I said that, but just to reiterate it. But we'll see what happens here. I do think that anime is an interesting platform to kind of explore this, but yeah, it. We'll see what happens. Uh, A Quiet Place Day One director reportedly signed on to write and direct Death Stranding live action adaptation movie, which we'll see what happens with that along with the anime. I feel like this is kind of something that we'll probably see one but not the other. We'll see what happens. A lot of movies get stuck in development hell. Gears of War, for instance, was stuck in development hell for a very long time, and it's still, even after recent announcements about a year ago, it's still pretty much there. So yeah. But on to probably the biggest news of the week is EA cancels Black Panther game, which I'm not really surprised, but closes Cliffhanger Games. Now, when it comes to EA closing games, or game studios, it makes sense. But the in an email sent to staff from EA Entertainment, President Laura Mealy, I've always said this wrong, said these changes alongside our current cancellations and layoffs are to be done to sharpen our focus and put our creative energy behind the most significant growth opportunities. Which, if we're being honest, is they have no fucking idea what they're doing. Um, EA is also laying off some individuals on both its mobile and central teams. When asked for exact numbers, EA declined to comment. We'll see the exact confirmation as time goes on, but roughly 300 roles were cut from Respawn and EA's fan care teams, which, yeah. But the decisions are hard from the CEO, which I always hate when CEOs talk about this. They affect people we've worked with, learned from, and shared real moments. Yeah, it's all, political speak to not take any accountability for why this is going on. EA Sports has not been mentioned, and EA Sports is a separate division entirely. Uh, when it comes down to like interesting like parts of this Black Panther thing, is Marvel and EA's agreement for Black Panther was part of a 3-game deal that included Iron Man and a third unannounced title. Uh, this partnership is still set to continue, and Motive Studios is leading the future of Marvel titles. But it's very interesting that like this is still continuing even after the cancellation of Black Panther. It sounds like Black Panther has kind of died as in hype, and maybe that's why they're focusing on something else. But this is also more like of a bigger problem that's going to go into the video game industry as we hit into the latter half of 2025. And personally, I think it's going to continue in the early 2026 year. But layoffs are abound. Warner Brothers is showing more and more hits as time goes on. I mean, we talk about it almost every time this video shows up. I mean, even NetherRealms uh, is in the news, so we can't escape that. There's a bunch of other stuff. We're going to see what happens with Nintendo in the next couple months. We're going to see with Sony. Sony's always an interesting thing. Xbox is also going to take a hit. Everybody's going to basically take a hit at this point, and I'm not surprised. I'm really not. It feels like the video game industry is at the point. But yeah, with Cliffhanger gone, it's another studio closed. There's nothing really much else to say. But with that, that's the little short news cycle for this week. Hopefully, next one is a better one.